As the first wave of NFL free agency starts to slow down, we open up the Peacock and Williamson mailbag. We got questions on quarterbacks, who's going where. We're getting clues to what will happen that hasn't happened yet, and a whole lot more as free agency and the NFL draft start to come together in March right now.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. I love the everydayers out there. And if you're not subscribed yet, what are you doing with your life? You got to subscribe, and helps other people find the podcast as well. So subscribe on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcast. And if you're already subbed up, maybe just hit the thumbs up. Let us know that you're here, and we love you, and we appreciate you for it. And of course, if you're new to the program, welcome. Hang out with us every day, breaking down the entire NFL. Matt's mock draft. I think we're on 2.0 for you, right, Matt? Is going to be ready.
Yeah, it's coming to completion. I think I'm going to be 32 for 32.
Here we go. It's happening. Might be the last one because it'll be that good tomorrow. Friday's episode. Tune in here to Peacock and Williamson for Matt Williamson's post first wave free agency mock draft. Unless something massive comes and shakes it up in the next 24 hours. We got to talk quarterbacks, and there are still some teams that don't have a quarterback.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's enough players in the draft to facilitate those football teams, Matt. One of them in Pittsburgh has added a quarterback, Mason Rudolph. We hardly knew you. Welcome back again. Mason Rudolph is signing with the Pittsburgh Steelers. We saw Mac Jones go to the San Francisco 49ers, which is kind of brings up old wounds.
I find that so fascinating.
I mean, I hated about it. It was the most obvious thing that was ever going to happen because the Niners needed a backup quarterback, and Kyle Shanahan loved him before the draft, and they went a different direction with a different quarterback. And so just bringing Kyle Shanahan and Mac Jones together finally as the backup to Brock Purdy and having a player in-house just in case negotiations go haywire. You have a guy who started games in the NFL, and don't be shocked if Mac Jones plays some of his best football in Kyle Shanahan's system too, right?
Super quick. I don't want to derail the show, and we always talk too much Niners and Steelers, but I don't think it's absolutely, utterly insane that Purdy negotiations don't go well. We're into camp, Mac's doing great, and Purdy ends up traded or something. Or Steelers are sick of Aaron Rodgers. Wilson, we'll talk about, is on the move. It's Rudolph and Tyler Shuck next year, or Rudolph and Kirk Cousins on the Wilson trade. And all these teams use money elsewhere. Like, I don't think it's crazy that one of those two scenarios actually happens.
Well, it comes together with our opening topic, which is about the teams that don't have quarterbacks yet and how those seats are going to be filled. Now, look, we had a question here. Is Mac Jones going to compete with Brock Purdy as QB1? No, not even close. If Brock Purdy's around. The thing is that Brock Purdy's probably going to hold out until he gets a contract right now. So I can't wait for those first camp reports to hit. Hey, Mac Jones looks pretty good.
Yeah.
And you know, and
played well for Jacksonville last year.
That's the path we're on. And Mac Jones, you know, is better than maybe he has looked in some of his seasons. Didn't have the greatest start to his career. Clearly, he shouldn't have been the number 3 pick in the NFL draft. Shouldn't have been the 15th pick in the NFL draft. You know, he was kind of a day 2 guy all day. That was what my evaluation was. This isn't hindsight stuff here either. So, but now he's right where he should be with Kyle Shanahan, but as a backup and not a starter. But I can't wait for what the storylines could be. And 49ers fans who went through this, you know, and this was, remember, like this was the COVID offseason, and like everyone's just at home. Or like, well, the Niners traded up to 3, and like we're almost coming up on the anniversary of the Niners trading up to pick number 3, but not knowing who their quarterback is going to be. And it turns out that Fields was number 3 on their list. Think has been the best quarterback so far of the 3. So the 49ers had the exact wrong order of those 3 guys. I don't know what Fields would have looked like. I don't know what Mac Jones would have looked like. I think Mac Jones probably would have looked better than he did in New England, probably in San Francisco.
Didn't mean to open old wounds, but
Mac Jones did
I just think these two going back to these two signings, I just find very fascinating.
Oh, I know it's amazing for backup quarterbacks to be the first thing we talk about here on today's program. By the way, Mac Jones had Matt Patricia as his offensive coordinator in like year 2 of his career, right? So like that did happen to the guy. The Tennessee Titans don't have a quarterback. The Cleveland Browns traded for Kenny Pickett, which was a weird trade that I thought the Eagles won handily.
And Russell Wilson's there today.
And the New York Giants don't have a quarterback either, and Russell Wilson's going there tomorrow. And the other teams, Steelers. We're down to 4 teams, right, that don't have a clear starting quarterback right now. The Steelers are drafting 21. The other 3 teams are drafted 1, 2, 3.
I think the Giants are concerned because I don't think anybody wants to. The more I think about this, I don't think anybody wants to take Fedor in the top 5 or so. He's gonna be a first-round pick, but I don't think he's gonna be in the top 5. And we'll go get to the Titans, but I think they're just gonna take Ward. And now the Giants are going, what are we? We really need a developmental quarterback here. I mean, could they be the Levis, Jackson Dart first pick in the second day team? Maybe, but it'd be nice to have Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers or somebody in the building first. I think they're the most panicked.
We'll start with the Titans because in free agency, they've done something that I think clues us into their plans, right? Because they've now added a guard. So. They gave too much money to Dan Moore. I think a lot of people, but they're trying to build a nest for the quarterback they're about to draft number 1. I mean, that is I don't want to spoil your mock draft, but it feels to me that's
it's going to be Ward. I'm putting Ward to the Titans at 1.
Cam Ward to the Titans at number 1 feels much more rock solid today than it did 2 weeks ago.
So my last mock draft, which was a couple weeks ago, I put Ward. We're not going to do trades. This is for Steelers.com. I put Ward there, but my verbiage was, I don't know if it'll be the Titans, Giants, or another team. I think Ward goes 1. Now it's going to be, they finally have an offensive line. I mean, just look at their offensive line moves. 2 years ago, they draft Skoronski in the first round. Last year, they draft Latham in the first round, put him at left tackle, which they shouldn't. Last offseason, they signed Cushenberry to the highest center deal. And all 3 of those guys are highly promising. Yes, you overpay for Dan Moore, but he's a left tackle. They can afford it. It's not the best move in the world, but then you get to move Latham to the right side. And then they finalize it with Zeitler yesterday, and he's your last piece. He's a pure guard, and he's going to be the adult in the room with a great O-line coach. And for the first time in 5 years, the Titans now has an offensive line that's worthy of a first overall pick to be behind. I don't care who the receivers are and all that. We'll figure that stuff out. But now you take Ward.
So the Titans clearly have the hammer because they have the first pick in the draft and they can decide how that goes for themselves. And it seems like they're potentially on that path right now. Okay, so that happens. Well, what's the next logical step? There is, Russell
Browns
Wilson
and Giants are kind of a mess.
Right. Russell Wilson's out there. Aaron Rodgers is out there. Kirk Cousins is out there. Kind of big questions for all 3 of those guys, veteran players. What are they at this point in their career? Are they even available? Does he even want to play? Could you even get Kirk Cousins? Is he just going to be kind of held hostage as the backup for the Atlanta Falcons? I would imagine he would like an opportunity to play somewhere and be a starter somewhere. If the Steelers haven't signed Russell Wilson yet, that kind of tells you what they think about him. And
let's start there real quick.
Okay.
Because by all accounts, Wilson's in Cleveland today, which only happens to be a 2.5-hour drive from where I'm sitting at the moment if he would want to detour and come south for whatever reason. And he's supposed to be in the Giants tomorrow. Why would he do that? He's either doing that because the Steelers said, we don't want you. We're going to sign. We don't want you. For whatever reason, we don't want you.
Yeah,
or he's saying, I'm sick of waiting around for you, Steelers. I'm going to press your hands, and I need to find a job. And these 2 teams need me. And either way, he can't sit on his hands and just sit there and turn down the Browns or especially the Giants. I kind of feel like the Giants is the move. His wife is a huge celebrity. Go to New York,
And he might need to do whatever he can as fast as he can, even if he'd prefer the Steelers.
Exactly.
Just make sure the music doesn't stop and there are no chairs left for him.
Exactly. Right. I think he needs to act in the next 24 hours or so.
A question from Timothy: are the Steelers trying to moneyball the quarterback situation?
I originally thought that there's been so much speculation in town about Rodgers wants a 2-year, $90 million deal, which sounds really high for how he played in his age, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of that stuff came from Pittsburgh people that I don't really trust. But one of the most trusted guys and a friend of mine, Jerry Dulac, who's been doing this forever, basically reported it's not a money hang up with Rodgers. He's just being a pain in the butt and taking his time and wants attention, and he's in a dark cave or whatever it is he's doing. And if that's the case, I think the Steelers might be like, I'm not dealing with your nonsense for the next 2 years either. I don't know. Or he could be signed in 5 minutes.
Right. Yeah. And so it's possible, right, that the Steelers could be sitting there in April and the first round starts and they still don't have their quarterback.
It might just be Rudolph. And they're waiting for Cousins to get cut. Or the other name is, I think Carr can still be had. They restructured his deal to get under the cap. But if they trade Carr after June 1st, and spoiler, I have Shador going to the Saints at like 8 or 9 or wherever they pick. So if you just kind of hang with Rudolph and just see what presents itself, and really think about next year for your quarterback, is that better than giving Aaron Rodgers $45 million and dealing with nonsense? Maybe,
As far as the cap goes, the Saints, they might not cut him, but they could trade him because the team would take on some of the bonus money.
Now they can, because he's like, there's almost no chance he's back in 26, because he's like an $80-some million cap hit because they gave him all his money this year as a signing bonus.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you trade it for him, he'd cost you like nothing in terms of the new team, and the Saints would actually get cap relief next year. And they have to realize they're not in it to win it, but they don't ever realize that.
All right, more clues.
Cousins and Carr are still interesting to me.
So yeah, it's not done. It's not done quite yet.
No.
With the QB shuffle. More clues on what's going on with the quarterbacks in the NFL. I want to talk about some other notable signings around the league and what's going on with some certain money markets. What's going on with the salary cap for teams? What's going on with certain position groups for some teams? More from the Peacock and Williamson mailbag next. This episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Monarch Money. I want to do that every single time. It's not locked on anything. It's Peacock and Williamson. I've got so many different podcasts bouncing around in my head every single day. Have you ever checked your bank account and wonder, where did all the money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it's easy to lose track. And it's happened to me, I know, numerous times. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. And stop managing your money and start building wealth. When you get started using Monarch, you realize how much you were spending on food delivery. Now you can budget smarter and save more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. And now you can take control of your finances with Monarch Money all in one app. And all you got to do is use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. Okay, Matt. So as we look at where things are, if the Cleveland Browns are on the clock at 2, and we're going to go through your mock draft tomorrow, so you don't need to spoil any more of your mock draft.
Yeah.
But if you're the Browns and you have an inkling here, do you need to get a veteran quarterback? We did have a question about if Kenny Pickett's going to ask for a trade again if they sign Russell Wilson or somebody over the top of him. If he's like,
I thought that was hilarious, right?
The guy.
Because that's exactly what happened here.
And the Giants
he said, I want to trade because I don't want to compete with Wilson.
And the team that's the most up against it, they're already on the hot seat. Their owner told them they're on the hot seat. The team that you see feels like you could take advantage of, whether you're a free agent quarterback or you're another team that's going to trade a quarterback, is the New York Giants. They haven't done anything. I mean, even if like Mac Jones ended up there or Mason Rudolph or,
Right.
what are the New York Giants doing? What is their plan at quarterback? Because they're sitting back and they're not even guaranteed they can get the second best quarterback in the draft.
I know. And really for my mock, two of the hardest picks were 2 and 3. Like if we operate on the assumption Ward's a Titan and they hold all the power and they just shut the phone lines down, like Shador and Carter are the next two best picks, but that doesn't, or not Shador,
Hunter
and Carter are the next two best guys. And sure, the Giants and Browns could use either, but it's not like a slam dunk to me. Like it doesn't exactly fill what they're after. It makes me think Wilson's going to end up at one of those two places. I mean, I kind of look at the Giants quarterback room like Russell Wilson and Dart.
God, that's about the worst case scenario for me.
Right.
And also, like if this was a new regime, new head coach, new GM, Giants are in a great spot actually.
Right.
Because you could just be like, okay, cool. We got the third pick in the draft. If Cam Ward falls to us, we can draft him. If we love Shador Sanders, we can draft him. But guess what? There's these other two blue chip guys, and we're guaranteed to get one of them at pick number 3. So we're cool. We could just sit back. We can get a veteran stopgap, whatever. We can figure this thing out. But that's not where they are. And
they don't really need an edge rusher. And
I think it's a lesson for the NFL and owners. You can't go into a situation with a staff that's on the hot seat already. Because
Good
now
point.
they're going to screw up what you could build in the future. Because what I just laid out is how they should feel about this draft. But instead, they're going to feel like they need to do something that's maybe dumb. And so it's hard for me to say that they wouldn't take, like, say, Shador Sanders just because it's the highest upside unknown and they don't have any other option at 3.
Or do you take like Membu or Will Campbell too early, or like that's you're paying paying $1 for something that costs 80 cents.
You don't allow yourself to get the just the star player that falls into your lap at 3 because it doesn't fit what you're forced into right now. Because
people wonder why bad teams stay bad.
Yeah.
Well, you're kind of making your head coach and front office people play left-handed or with one hand tied behind their back,
And there's not like what's the best option? The best option is if like Ward does fall to them at 3 at this point, right?
Or they do something insane, like we'll give you 3 first-round picks to move up 2 spots for Ward.
What if
save our job,
Or we can just combine it all and
Dexter Lawrence in a first to get the 1,
They send the 49ers number 3 and next year's first rounder for Brock Purdy, and Kyle Shanahan's like, I got my guy in Mac Jones now.
See, that's what I've been kind of thinking too.
Negotiations get really ugly in the next month or two before the draft. Oh man.
Yeah. Or make like the car move or whatever. But Purdy at least I don't know. But again, the Browns and Giants are kind of in a bind. Not that the Steelers aren't. I mean,
by the way,
they'll win 8 games either way,
All right, yeah, that's true. Like, how much better are the Steelers with Russell
Rodgers and Rudolph,
and then or even who I don't know what Rodgers even is these days, or even Cousins.
Right.
So you might as well go cheap and moneyball it, as one of our listeners put it, at quarterback, and then maybe Shador Sanders falls to 21, and you're like, cool, we like that. We weren't going to trade up for him, but man, this guy's got something, and he could be something. So we have to take it like the Kenny Pickett draft, right? Which is what one of our listeners asked us about. I think it's the QB combine. This is from Rock and Steelers. The QB combine grades aren't anything special. I feel like the media is overhyping them like they did at the beginning of the Pickett year. Malik Willis had the better grade than Cam Ward. I could see the world where Steelers get their choice, like the Kenny Pickett draft. So he's talking about even Cam Ward potentially being there. I could see Shador Sanders being there. As we
maybe Shador,
probably not Cam Ward.
Yeah. I think more of it's like a Dart or Shuck situation if they draft one this year. But they don't have a 2nd-round pick because they don't have Metcalf.
We haven't talked about another 2021 pick that went even higher than Mac Jones, and that is Zach Wilson, that is signed as the backup quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. So a little Tua insurance there, 1 year, $6 million. What are the Miami Dolphins doing? Because Sir Madridissimo says, I always get, sorry, sir, I always get your name wrong. It's Madridissimo, like Madrid.
Okay.
What on earth are the Dolphins doing, he says, they're neither selling like the 49ers or buying.
Right.
This team won't make the playoffs. Why not use it as a transition year? So that's interesting because it's like
That's a
you
great
can't
question.
just be the same because that wasn't good enough. So either get better or get worse is what Sir Madridissimo is saying.
Like, it sounds stupid, but I like getting Westbrook Akine on 2 years, 6.5. Like, I think any team should be thrilled to do that. He's your number 4. He's a quality player. Okay. Signing James Daniels, who was playing really well before a really bad injury. Good. They finally, Wig and I on Fridays always laugh at them. They have too many Ferraris, not enough dump trucks. Well, at least you got another dump truck. Nothing else they've done, and I was going to say moves the needle. I'm not even sure Westbrook Akine or James Daniels moves the needle, but they seem like the limbo team again now. Like, you're just kind of running it back, and we're going to be fast, and we're not going to trade Tyreek, and hope Tua stays healthy, and
if
they might all be in the hot seat.
Maybe Zach Wilson gives us more than Skylar Thompson and Huntley and whoever else we've had play some quarterback when Tua was out in recent history.
I mean, I don't ever besmudge a team to say a highly drafted quarterback. We'll try to revive him. Fine.
Yeah,
I don't think you will. And
1 year, $6 million. He's your backup anyway. So that's not what we're talking about.
Maybe a strike gold. Right.
What we're talking about is what's going to be markedly different for your football team this year.
That's the point.
And what they're saying is we're better than we showed you last year. Is what they're trying to say. Are they right about that? I don't know.
That's kind of what I'm saying. Like, you've kind of run this formula back 3 years in a row.
Mm-hmm.
And what's better about it? Like, their run game was so bad last year. Chan's not ripping off 7 yards a carry last year. People are catching up to the crossers and all the motion and stuff like that. And then they can't get anything on 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1. Like, what's different? I think it's a great question. I don't have an answer. I'm not sure they have an answer, which is the problem.
What's going on with a couple of positions that have been not the highest value positions in NFL history? One continues to drop. One is actually skyrocketing. Guards? Is guards a premium position now in the NFL? Seems like a new position gets added to it every single year. How much should we be paying NFL guards next? This episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. It's March Madness. It's nearly here. And FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on all of the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. You got your eye on a specific underdog this year in the college hoops tournament. FanDuel makes it easy to get them spreads, totals, game props, all of it. When the tournament is happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. And the FanDuel app is super simple to use. It is easy. It is fun. And when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around. And by the way, you can still bet on the NFL. Who's going to win the next Super Bowl? You think maybe the free agency period has moved the needle for a certain team for you. And of course, those NFL draft props. Find it all at FanDuel.com or download the app and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. That is FanDuel.com. Why are guards making so much money? That wasn't a premium position. The up the middle positions are starting to get a little bit more. Do you think this is a function of the salary cap? Is it a scarcity thing? Michael says, guys, the guard market money has skyrocketed the last several years. Are we getting to the point where we need to reevaluate guard draft value? Maybe a first round guard in the top 15 shouldn't be so scoffed at.
And this year will be interesting because the Membos and Campbells could be guards masquerading as tackles for a year or so, and there just aren't that many tackles out there. So I have mixed feelings on this. I think teams are getting so much smarter with the comp game that if you draft the guard and let him go or let the guy go ahead of him, you almost are always going to get comp picks because Dan Moore, Jalen Moore, et cetera, get so much overspent on when they hit free agency. It's great to have my point is it's great to have your extra lineman hit free agency, offensive lineman, because you're almost going to get a pick back in return, which is wonderful.
And then you're good on the offensive line as well if you keep drafting these guys. And
exactly.
It's clear,
So when in doubt,
that there is more scarcity. First of all, huge scarcity at offensive tackle, but there's even scarcity for teams at guard. Like teams are struggling to find 5 good offensive linemen to start a season.
Yes, and I think the D tackles they're trying to block are freakier than ever. It always goes back to my D line's better than O line conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And we're seeing more short quarterbacks that need that interior pocket. The Bryce Youngs, Drew Brees was the poster boy for this, where we're going to build up the middle. But to your question, there is a fly in the ointment in that the stupid CBA counts centers and guards the same as tackles for the 5th-year option. So, like, for example, the Ravens draft Linderbaum. He's one of the best safety or one of the best centers in all of football. You would think that's an easy, yes, we're going to pick up his 5th-year option. We love him. We did a good job drafting a good player. But you got to pay him the average of all the tackles. So it's like a $28 million center or $25 million center. It makes no financial sense because the CBA is dumb. So I don't know that maybe early 2nd round, you start grabbing those centers and guards like crazy.
Yeah.
On bad teams.
That's why you usually kind of see that run, and you have to. It's a great bargaining chip for someone like Linderbaum to get that 2nd contract. They're like, hey man, I'm cool playing this thing out. You probably don't even want me to play this out, so let's get this done. And if you want to get it done now, this is the number I want. So
jumping off point is 25 million guaranteed as a 5th-year option. And
you guys like Aaron Banks making $19 million a year in free agency at guard. How much did I've got the list right here? Will Fries, $17.5 million, 5-year contract, $88 million.
Good players, but they're not special.
Makari, $12.5 million per year. James Daniels, $8 million, 3-year contract.
Come off a big injury, right?
Yeah.
Makari wasn't even a true starter for most of his career, So I think what in doubt, I've been saying this around here, take a 4th-round guard if you don't need them and see what happens. And then you let the veteran walk and you get a 3rd-round comp pick. And
especially an offensive tackle, which is why there's almost no limit to how high someone like Membo could go this year in the draft. Because
spoiler, I have him going very high.
Number 1 overall. That offensive line. But that's it. Because
like if Joe Alt was coming up in this draft, would I have him 2nd in my mock draft for all those reasons, or 3rd? You know what I mean? Like a true awesome tackle, not alone Jonathan Ogden or Walter Jones or Orlando Pace. Like if Ward goes off the board, would Alt be the next desirable player financially in particular? I think the answer is yes.
And part of it is a function of the salary cap. So if you don't have a lot of good players and you're like, well, we can at least sign a really good guard, or we can at least sign a really good safety
and help the tackle that can't play well,
Right. And so
I don't have to help the interior,
and the teams that are like, spending a lot of money already and have a lot of good players, they're like, well, we can't pay the guard, but we can get a comp pick. And this other team that just needs a lot of help and has money, they can pay the guard a lot of money, and they can worry about the 3rd and 4th years of that 4-year contract when they get there, because they just need better football players right now. And then that's kind of the dance.
The Bears this year, the Panthers last year. We got this 1st-round quarterback and we can't get killed. We'll give you anything you want for a competent guard, let alone Joe Tooney,
Right. And the Titans this year, they don't care if they overpay for Dan Moore. They're not worried about the end of the contract. They're worried about protecting potentially the number 1 pick in the draft as well as they possibly can. And he was the best guy that they could get, so they don't care that they're overpaying for him.
I just can't have a turnstile at left tackle. A traffic cone.
Yeah, you can't have a traffic cone out there. And so a veteran player that you how about Trevon Merrick getting $17 million a year at safety? He's a nice player, but I didn't really see that coming. He got more than Javon Holland got, and Javon Holland is not quite as highly thought of as he was to start his career. Both 25-year-old guys, though, and so still some big money out there for middle of the field players. Talanoa Hufanga has been a really banged up player. He got $15 million a year as well at safety. So even up the middle on offense, up the middle on defense, traditionally places where you could go cheap. It's kind of getting a little bit of expensive everywhere, and I think it's because there's just a lot of money in the league, and a lot of money in the league. A lot of teams have enough cap space to do it, and they see a player out there, and they're not worried about how much they're paying. And obviously, the end of these contracts, the details will start to look a lot different for some of these contracts as well. Speaking of positions devalued, how about this one? Brian says, should the fullback position pretty much go away and just be dedicated to 3 other positions on the football field? You know, you can have a pass catching running back that can do some fullback stuff. You can have a goal line back who's a bigger back. And you can always bring in like just an extra lineman. We see defensive tackles lining up on offense as fullback. And I tend to agree, like employing a full-time fullback and you know, the 9 consecutive Pro Bowls for Kyle Juszczyk, and he was just released. And I look at the 49ers and Kyle Juszczyk, and it's like, well, he's not even that good of a lead. Like the Niners aren't that good. When they struggle is like short yardage when they got a fullback on the field and they need to get a yard, right?
Yeah.
And if the best thing your fullback does is catch a football, but it's because he got schemed up wide open anyways. Well, if you're scheming him up, then it's not like you're routing people up and he's like your 7th best receiver. And so it's like, I didn't even see really the utility anymore in having the best fullback in the NFL who's been to 9 consecutive Pro Bowls, let alone a guy who's really one-dimensional at fullback. And like, how could a 300-pound lineman not block better than a fullback anyway? Everyone knows what you're going to do. And maybe it's even more tricky if you do put a big man back there, then you go play action. So yeah, fullbacks, and there's no college fullbacks to even bring to the NFL anymore anyway. So
that's the thing. They're dead. Yeah. You got to make your own. Real quick on Juszczyk, and kind of like you said, yeah, that's an interesting, especially 5-6 years ago, people didn't have as good an answer. You could get 8 easy yards on a dump off to him or whatever. But now I look at him and like, somebody else on the field's a better ball carrier than you. Everyone on the field's a better receiver than you. You know, like I always talk about this, like, trust me, Van Jefferson with the Steelers. Like sometimes the defense just says thank you when you put that guy on the field.
Yeah.
And Juszczyk might be that guy now. But what about like Lorenzo Neal, you know, like paving the way for Eddie George? Like Patrick Ricard got resigned, but he was a D lineman turned fullback. The Chargers are turning all these D linemen into fullbacks, which is a Raven Harbaugh thing to do. But if Lorenzo Neal existed, would teams want him? Like he's the best pure fullback, lead him through the whole guy I could remember.
If you're going to be a fullback, you better be awesome at the fullback.
Awesome.
Stuff. Yeah.
Right.
You better create an advantage there.
A guard, like Ricard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Real quick, and
a lot of those guys don't play special teams.
We're talking a little bit about salary cap.
Too big and heavy to run down on kickoffs and things.
Right. You know? Yeah. Again, the utility of it. And even then, the best fullbacks in the NFL are on the field like what, 40% of the time at the most?
Yeah. Right.
They're really a truly every down player. The starter is the slot receiver, not the fullback, even for teams that have a fullback and use them the most.
If I want to get a guy out of the box, I bring a third receiver in and they're in dime as opposed to bringing in a 270-pound fullback.
And this could be a question we answer another time too, because we're pretty much out of time. But Joey Bag of Donuts says, do teams not care about dead salary cap money anymore since the cap goes up so much every year? And I think, you know, the 49ers are interesting this offseason. We saw it last offseason with 2 playoff teams. The Bills and the Denver Broncos had a ton of dead cap, and they were kind of like transitional and getting things right, but they were still a good football team. I think if you're an owner, the salary cap is accounting. Like the money they're paying is it's in a different
whole different ledger.
Right. So
yeah. Money out versus money in is way different than the salary cap.
If you're an owner who cuts a player who has a roster bonus due and you don't have to pay him $20 million in real dollars, you don't care if your salary cap has $20 million in fake dollars on it.
Exactly. Well said. And yes, people have stomached dead money much more and more now.
Yeah, and it's easier to move it around. And when the salary cap goes up, you're like, okay, cool, we can take on more dead money. And again, there's 2 things: there's cash and there's cap, and the cap is just the accounting of it. And to be honest with you, it's frustrating covering the NFL because I cover football and do radio because I don't want to do accounting. I stopped being a business major because I took accounting my first year in college. I was like, I am not going to dedicate my life to this. I'm going to go do broadcasting. And so I hate that I have to even talk about salary and all this stuff. I would much rather just have Major League Baseball, all guaranteed contracts. This is the contract. That's what it's going to be until it runs out.
That's how it should be, really.
Yeah.
To make our lives easier too, right?
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, everybody, for your questions. Always great questions from the listeners out there. And make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. Matt and I back tomorrow. Matt Williamson's post first wave free agency mock draft. Talk to you then right here. Peacock and Williamson.